Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be talking about scale degree terms. A scale degree term is, instead of expressing the note of a scale just with a number, second note of the scale, fifth note of the scale, etc., we have terms that we can use to correlate with each one of those numbers for when we're talking or writing about members of the scale, and eventually when we're talking about harmonies that are going to be built upon these members of the scale. So what I'm going to do is give you the terms, the names of each one, and then show you a few ways that you might be asked about that. So I've got the C major scale written here on the screen, and we're going to start with the first note and the last note, which are the same, and share the name of tonic. The most important note of the scale is the first and last, and it is called tonic. When we talk about tonal harmony, we're talking about music based on a tonic, music in a key based on a scale. So the tonic is the most important note of the scale and is scale degree 1. The second most important is what we're going to find on scale degree 5. Scale degree 5 is known as the dominant. So it's the second most important because dominant is always followed by tonic when we talk about harmonies. So there's nothing more important in music than the relationship between the dominant and the tonic, 5-1. All of tonal music can kind of be summed up by dominant and tonic. Most important tonic, second most important is scale degree 5, the dominant. Okay, let's talk about scale degree 4. Scale degree 4 is going to be known as the subdominant. Okay, notice the use of the Latin prefix there, sub, meaning underneath or before. So if the dominant is 5, the subdominant is what comes before the dominant. Okay, just something to draw your attention to here about these kind of spatial relationships. So the distance from the low tonic to the dominant is the same as the distance from the subdominant to the high tonic. It's the interval of what we call a fifth, meaning if I count the first note as 1, I'll get to 5 by the time I get to the last note. So C to G, C, D, E, F, G is a fifth, and F to the high C, F, G, A, B, C is also a fifth. So it's important that you know that the distance between the tonic and the dominant is the same as the distance between the subdominant and the high tonic. And then that leads us into the next scale degree that I'm going to talk about, which is scale degree 3. Scale degree 3 is called the mediant. Okay, M-E-D, middle, in the middle. So it occurs in between the tonic and the dominant, right? There's 5 notes there. The mediant is the middle one. Scale degree 3 occurs right in the middle of this tonic to dominant interval. Now, likewise, on scale degree 6 now is in between the subdominant and the high tonic. So this is going to get the name submediant. Now, you might be thinking, wait a second. If dominant was 5 and subdominant was what came before it, 4, why is submediant 6 and not 2? If the mediant's 3, shouldn't submediant be 2? Well, there's a lot of inconsistencies in theory terminology, and we just kind of have to learn how to deal with it sometimes. The reason it's called the submediant is because it's in the middle of the subdominant and the high tonic, just like the mediant is in the middle of the tonic and the dominant. So we've got almost all of them now. So scale degree 2 is not called the submediant. It is called then, if we can't express it as being below the mediant, we can express it as being above the tonic, and that's where the term comes from. It is called the supertonic. Above the tonic. Scale degree 2 is the supertonic. Okay, that leaves us with scale degree 7. And scale degree 7 is a little tricky. It's going to be called the leading tone. Scale degree 7 is called the leading tone because it leads back to 1. If you played the C major scale and stopped on B and stopped on scale degree 7, it would feel unfulfilled. It wants to go back to that tonic. Leading tone leads back to tonic. Okay, so there's the basic terms. Let me do one thing now. So we've done this in C major. Now say I go to the beginning of the line and I do this. I put 3 flats here, changing this from C major to C minor. The good news is that almost all of these terms stay the same, regardless of whether or not you're talking about a major or a minor key. The one difference is the leading tone. Now, to make this a leading tone, we need to borrow from the melodic minor and harmonic minor scales and raise this by a half step and make it a half step away from the tonic. That's a true leading tone in minor. But sometimes we don't have the leading tone in minor. We would have the B flat. In that instance, then scale degree 7 is called the subtonic. Okay, so if scale degree 7 is a half step away from the high tonic, it's a leading tone. If scale degree 7 is a whole step away from the high tonic, it's a subtonic. Okay, and this only occurs when we're talking about minor. Now, the submedian, scale degree 6, you might be thinking, well, that's variable in minor too. Does that have two different names? No, it doesn't. Submedian. If that was A flat or A natural, still submedian. Okay, so there's all the terms that you need to know. You got to just memorize these and know that mediant is 3, submedian 6, dominant's 5, etc. Because if I scroll down and show you how you're going to be asked about this, it'll become clear why. So here's an example of some of the questions that you could be asked. Take a look at the example question. C sharp, and it's labeled submediant. Okay, well, here's the question. C sharp is this submediant of what major scale? And the question wants you to write the scale in the blank next to it. Okay, so really what you need to do is first identify what scale degree we're talking about. Take the term and translate it into a number. So submediant refers to scale degree 6. So I'm going to go ahead and write a 6. And sometimes we can use this symbol. It's called a caret, to indicate scale degree 6. So submediant means 6. Now the question is asking us then, C sharp is the 6th note of what major scale? And then you write the key signature and the scale in the blank. Now this comes back to the best thing you can do getting starting out in music theory is just to memorize all the notes of all your major scales. It'll make learning everything else easier, and this is a good way to practice with it. Because you should know that C sharp is the 6th note of the E major scale. So that means I'm going to go ahead and write the key signature for E major on the staff, which is 4 sharps, and write E to E. And that's the answer to the question. This first note's in E. Okay? All right, so if you want, pause the video and try to do 1, 2, and 3 here, and then you can unpause it and we'll go over it. Number 1, B flat is the dominant. Well, remember that dominant refers to scale degree 5. So now the question wants to know, just reframe the question then. B flat is the 5th note of what major key? The answer is E flat. So I'm going to go ahead and write B flat, E flat, and A flat, the key signature for E flat major, and write E to E on the staff. Okay. Next one. If G sharp is the leading tone, what is the key in the major scale? Okay, well, leading tone is what scale degree? 7. G sharp is the 7th note of what major scale? A good one for leading tone is, since leading tone is 7, you know the tonic above it, and the key you're trying to find is a half step above. So if you want to work that way, instead of thinking G sharp's the 7th note and count back or think about accidentals in a key, you can just go up a half step, and that's going to be the key. So up a half step from G sharp is A. So I'm going to write 3 sharps on the staff because that's a key signature for A, and then write A to A. Last one. If A flat is the supertonic, what's the key? Well, supertonic is scale degree 2. A flat is 2nd in what key? G flat. I'm going to go ahead and write 6 flats. B, E, A, D, G, C. That's the key signature for G flat major. And then write G flat to G flat. Okay, there you go. The scale degree terms, best to just memorize them and know which term applies to which number, and some idea of how you might be asked to show your knowledge of these terms.